Top aide Gary Cohn was visibly dismayed yesterday by the president's comments, but he has no plans to resign. VA Secretary Shulkin said he's also staying, but that it is an insult to all veterans to let Nazis go unchallenged. Errol?
Well, Margaret, as you reported, we'd seen several resignations from the president's business councils before they were both disbanded by President Trump. And I'm just wondering, for someone who campaigned on his business credentials, how significant of a loss is this support, and what does it show as far as confidence that business leaders have? They represent such a huge segment, those leaders on that council, of American business. What that loss means in confidence to the president as well.
Well, certainly a blow to confidence, but as Steve Schwartzman, the CEO of Blackstone, is a dear friend of President Trump and seems to be standing by him, he was the one who broke this difficult news to the president. And it is really a symbolic blow. It is certainly, as you say, one when it comes to confidence, it would hurt the president. But really, it is going to be up to whether or not the president gets his legislative agenda through. Tax reform is really the top priority of many in the corporate community. Whether he can get the kind of savings and streamline some of the regulations that have made business difficult. Those are the things that really matter to the bottom line of businesses and to the bottom line of the executives who continue to support the president. But from a PR standpoint, it just became too difficult for many, a dozen or more, to stand by the president in the wake of his comments yesterday.
And Tuesday's news conference also seemed to show that once again, staying on message is difficult for the president. Just a few weeks ago, we were discussing new Chief of Staff General John Kelly and how he was bringing a sense of uniformity to what the White House was doing. And now here we are. What can you tell us about Hope Hicks assuming, I guess, an updated role of communications director or an expanded version of what she's already doing? Is that likely to amplify Donald Trump original, or will we get a kind of tampered down, focused message from the president?
Well, you're right to describe it as sort of an updated role for Hope Hicks, who is someone who is so key to the president in terms of the level of trust he has in her and her ability to help him craft how he communicates some of the bigger interviews, some of the bigger messages that he and his family want to make public. But she is very young to this position. She has been very effective behind the scenes in terms of being someone that the president does seek the counsel of when he wants to communicate. But again, this is not someone who is going to control the messaging of this president. This is someone who might be able to massage and counsel on it. But what we saw yesterday was Donald Trump, the man not necessarily speaking from the podium of the presidency of the United States that he now holds. He really brushes off a lot of the protocols, brushes off a lot of the expectations in terms of the moral authority of that to speak from what he felt was, it would seem, a personal upset at what he felt was unfair press coverage, what he felt was unfair scrutiny from some of the Republican allies. He just kept saying again and again, look, I said all the right things here that you were expecting of me, but, and it was the qualifying and it was the equivocating that became the problem. And for him, it just does not seem that that message, that contradiction, and why that is difficult in terms of the president of the United States to be spreading a message seen as divisive rather than unifying, could continue to be a problem for him. But today, I will note, Errol, we did not hear or see from the president. All we got from him in terms of communication was a tweet. So perhaps you are seeing him take a step back, knowing that it was such a loud exclamation point to the message he sent yesterday.
I also found it interesting, I mean, not just the response from Democrats, which is universal condemnation, but the condemnation on the Republican side is of varying degrees. Some had called out bigotry, some had focused on white supremacy at large, while others named the president. Senator Lindsey Graham saying specifically, your words have been divisive. Why do you think that he is actually the exception, not the rule? Why are so many Republicans in Congress not calling out President Trump directly?
Because the president still has a following and is still popular in many parts of this country. And many of his supporters are not necessarily going to be dissuaded by the words and the rhetoric. And they prove that time and again by voting for him. These popularity polls reflect some concern, but right now, it is a matter of really many of these leaders sort of taking their political lives in their own hands when they challenge the president. Remember, many of them face elections in 2018. Do they want to be seen as going head to head with President Trump, who will challenge them publicly and very directly? Senator Lindsey Graham has continued to do that. He is so established. He has painted himself as a partner to the president on issues he does agree with, but a vocal critic when he disagrees with him. Not a surprise, because remember, he ran against him in 2016 in the presidential race. So he was naturally already seen as someone who was assumed to be critical or skeptical of the president himself. So he's staying in that role, but it is a matter, as I said, of taking your political life in your hands. How much do you want to risk here? And that's what you're seeing a lot of Republicans weigh. As you said, House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell really denounced the sentiment, but not the president.
And I'm wondering if we can read from that there is a possibility that they want to get some of the president's top agenda items accomplished before the end of the year. The White House is still pushing for a repeal and replace of Obamacare. Senate Leader McConnell has said he'd like to move on to tax reform, to infrastructure. Is that then a sign that they want to get that work done in the short term?
Yes, that is why many of these top advisors to the president are saying they're staying. Gary Cohn yesterday, right after that conclusion of that explosive press conference, Gary Cohn, the top economic aide, went back down to try to answer questions about infrastructure. The Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, showed up with charts as if to normalize what was clearly a very abnormal moment, because they want to stay focused on what they say is infrastructure getting done before the end of the year, tax reform. But of course, we know that that ask gets more and more difficult. It gets less politically possible, you could say, or at least more difficult when the president is attacking members of his own party whose help he needs to get that legislative agenda through. And of course, Mitch McConnell, a Senate Majority Leader, is certainly someone that the president needs to make an ally rather than an adversary, something he hasn't done rhetorically, and maybe now he will need to do in order to get that laundry list of items through.
Indeed. Margaret Brennan joining us from Bridgewater, New Jersey. And just a note to viewers, this is a place that Margaret, myself, and Major are all getting to know very well, because this is the president's working vacation, and this is as close as we can get, but we'll continue to cover the White House as best we can. Margaret, great to see you. Thanks.